Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to just a quick overview of the book selections that you're going to be considering for your World Lit book clubs here in spring of 2021. Let me adjust that year. So the goal of this, just hopefully short video, is for you to have a quick overview of the 8 possible books that you can choose from for your World Lit book clubs, and then a bit of information about the interest survey that we're going to ask that you fill out. So the interest survey gives you a chance to choose your top 3 choices, and you'll need to do that by this Friday. So I'm just going to go through this presentation just really quickly, and just to give you a little bit of honesty, I've not read all of these books, although I know them. I've had students read these books before, and I know quite a bit about each of them. So these are all chosen because they are considered to be world literature, except for one, and I'll talk about that one toward the end. So what's coming is the 8 possible choices for your book clubs this year. So the first book I want to talk about is a book called The God of Small Things. So for each of these books, I'm going to talk about the author, the setting, and then just give you a brief plot overview. Some of these plot overviews are from the back of the book, and I can kind of talk about that as well. So this is an author named Arundhati Roy. She is an Indian author, and this book takes place in India post-colonization. So this is going to be a book that has to do with India after they were colonized by England, which we're going to be learning about in the second semester units. This is a book that won an award called the Booker Prize, which is a really, really illustrious book award. This book is challenging though, so if you're considering this one, please know that it's a book that has sort of a divergent plot line. You have 2 different stories kind of happening at the same time, that for some, if you don't read carefully, can be hard to follow. That said, students who read this book truly love it and highly recommend it. It's a story of forbidden love, a family saga that starts with a tragedy, and the story of twins who basically have to overcome um, sort of an issue that happens early on in the book. So the book explores how small things affect people's behavior in their lives. But what is really cool about this book is that it's going to really touch on some lasting effects of the caste system, and it's going to touch on fraternal relationships and the power of having fraternal companionship, like being twins. If you were interested in the caste system at all, you might consider this book. Again, it's a bestseller. It's beautifully written, and it's an award-winning book. So that's the first choice. Second choice, Homegoing. I talked about this one whenever we did our first semester independent reading books. I just want to go over it again. So this is from author Yag Yasi, who was born in Ghana and is now living in the United States. So she might be called an American author, but she was born in Ghana, and this book takes place in Ghana and the U.S. both. So it's going to be in the 17th to 20th century. That's my coffee maker. And it's going to take place in both Ghana and West Africa, and also in the American South. It tells the story of 2 half sisters, Afia and Essie, who are born into different villages in West Africa, and both are subject to the slave trade. One ends up being shipped over to the United States, and one ends up actually living as a wife for a slave trader in the slave castle. And she ends up staying in West Africa. And what's really cool about this book is that each of those 2 initial characters go through multiple generations. And so over the course of this book, each chapter is going to tell a story about a new generation and a new character based on that family tree. And it's really cool because as you read this book, it's going to be what's called episodic. Each chapter is going to feel like kind of its own brand new story. So it might feel even like watching, a TV show, if you want to consider it like that. The story touches on issues of slavery, touches on stories of the American South. So if you want to know about either of those things a little bit more, it's a beautiful book, heartbreaking but really powerful. So that is the second choice, called Homegoing. Third choice is The Power. This is a new choice this year. I've never offered this choice before, but considering where we are with remote learning, I wanted to offer this. I believe this is a book that students might have read last year in the ninth grade. So if you did read this book already, I want you to choose something else. I do want you to read a brand new book. That said, this book is from a Canadian author. However, I'm offering this book because it deals with settings of Nigeria, England, and America. This book is science fiction. Some might call it dystopian fiction, which is why you might have read it in the ninth grade. This book takes place 5,000 years in the future, so the very, very distant future. And basically, from what I understand about this book, it is the book of a world where women have taken over, and women are basically given massive power over men. And so it's the reversal of a patriarchal society where women are those in power and women are in charge of every possible decision. Not just that, but teenage girls have immense physical power and they can cause agonizing pain and even death, according to this book. So the world is going to go through a massive shift in this book, according to a small twist of nature. So it doesn't want to give too much away here in its description, but something's going to happen where things become unhinged. The story is cool because it deals with multiple different characters in different parts of the world: Nigeria and Africa, um, what is once known as Wisconsin in the United States, and then London, England. So those are three different stories that go on in this one book. It's an easy read from what I understand, and apparently it will knock your socks off, according to Margaret Atwood. So consider it, and again, if you've read it already, make sure you choose a unique book. The next choice is The Kite Runner. This was again offered during your independent reading books first semester. This is from author Khaled Hosseini. Much like the book we're actually going to be reading later this semester called A Thousand Splendid Suns, or his other book, um, And the Mountains Echoed, this book takes place in Afghanistan in the 20th century. It's his first novel, and it's written in 2003. This story comes after 9/11, and so the author really was touching on some of the themes of the Taliban in the Middle East, and issues of power and people taking over. So this is the story of an unlikely friendship between a wealthy boy living in a wealthy home environment with his father, and then his servant boy. So because the family's wealthy, they have servants, and the wealthy boy befriends the servant's uh, child. So it's a story of sort of being friends, but being from very different parts of the socioeconomic status. One rich, one poor. Over the course of the book, there's conflict that arises from that. And at one point, there is a tragic scene where the servant boy goes through something pretty awful. We also learn that the servant boy and the rich boy have something about their relationship that they didn't know. There's sort of a secret to learn about how they came to know each other. So it's an exploration of the power of fathers and sons, and fighting outside influence, and possibly even war in a war-torn society. The book will cover the servant boy growing up into a man and having to come and seek redemption for something that went really bad at the beginning of the book. It's kind of graphic at times, but the students who read this book really love it. It's a quick read, and a pretty easy read. The next book is a brand new one, and this is something I read many, many years ago when it first came out. The Life of Pi. I don't have a lot about this. I just want to give a brief overview. It's the from an author named Jan Martel, and although the author is Canadian, the story takes place predominantly in England at the beginning, and then later it's going to take place as a survival story out on the ocean. So this takes place in the 20th century. The overview is that Pi, or Piscine, as he's named in the book, is a boy, and he's the son of a father who owns a really large zoo. And at one point, through sort of a mishap, they're planning on shipping a few animals, and there's a shipwreck. And during that shipwreck, Pi is the only one who survives on this single boat. And he becomes stranded in the Pacific Ocean, specifically with one of the tigers from the boat, and the tiger's name is Richard Parker. And so over the course of the story, you have this relationship between a young boy and a wild animal on the boat, and it's really curious. and they have to go through basically a simple survival epic. And so, if you're at all interested in sort of fantasy and the idea of communicating with animals, if you like survival or adventure stories, you might consider this as well. Like The God of Small Things, this book won the Man Booker Prize again, which is an illustrious annual prize given to the best book of the year. So whenever this book came out, it was considered to be the best book of the year. So consider it. It's also a major motion picture. If you read this book and like it, you can maybe go and find the movie somewhere. The next choice is one that I said isn't going to be world lit. This is technically American lit, but I want to consider it because it has so much to do with what we are learning about in Unit 4 and Unit 5. So this is called The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. The setting is the American South in the 18th, early 19th century. And basically, this is a brand new book that's just came out a few months ago, maybe even not even a few months ago. I think it maybe came out in November, but don't quote me on that. Either way, it came out in 2020, and it is the book of a boy named Hiram Walker, who's born into slavery. His mother was sold away from him, and so he's sort of abandoned, and he's robbed of all of his memory of her. So this happened when he was a young boy. But whenever that happened, he was gifted with this mysterious power, where he can kind of see beyond the natural world. If you want to consider, he can maybe see premonitions or see into the future or into the past a little bit. And so this book is kind of magical in that way we call magical realism, but it's a story about an unexpected journey that takes the boy Hiram from the corrupt grandeur of the plantations of the South into the wilderness, and even up into the north as he's going to try to escape slavery. And so, although this book generally the idea of a slave trying to escape has been told, this book is beautiful. It's challenging, and it's unique in the fact that the main character kind of has this special characteristic about them. Next is Othello. If you're a student who is really kind of missing out on Shakespeare, normally we do Shakespeare first semester. Because of pandemic, we haven't done it this year. This book is, sorry, this actually is a play. So this is not a book. This is going to be a play by William Shakespeare. I love it. It's one of his easier plays to read. If you're a student who likes reading Shakespeare or you want to challenge yourself, you might consider this. So, Othello is the story of a Moor named Othello. A Moor basically is a North African Muslim character. And so they're given the title Moor. And it's going to be the story, like all Shakespeare, not all Shakespeare, but many Shakespeare stories, a story of love and forbidden love. So this Middle Eastern, not Middle Eastern, this North African man is going to fall in love with Italian royalty, an Italian woman. And a lot of people aren't going to be happy about that. A lot of people in Italy don't like the fact that a North African has married a Italian woman. So there's issues of racism. He's also older, so there's issues of age, cultural differences, being that he's Muslim. And so what we're going to see in this play is Othello and Desdemona try to be together in love, but there's going to be an outsider named Iago. He is a villain. Iago, the villain, is going to try to destroy Othello and Desdemona over the course of the play. Like many Shakespeare plays, it's going to end in terrible tragedy with lots of death, but you'll have to read to find out how that goes down. The last choice is going to be Frankenstein, another piece of sort of classical literature. This is from author Mary Shelley. She's one of the first female novelists to have, to garner national attention and recognize. So this book is something you may be familiar with, the story of Frankenstein, the monster. So just a little bit about it. The setting is going to be in the 19th century in both Germany and Switzerland. And although the book is named Frankenstein, it's actually more about Victor Frankenstein, the scientist, and his creature, who doesn't actually have a name. The creature's never given a name in this story. So we all know the basic premise. Victor Frankenstein learns a little bit about how to reanimate life. He gathers a bunch of human body parts and he builds a creature who comes alive. However, what a lot of people don't know is Victor Frankenstein makes a mistake. Immediately after he brings and animates his creature to life, he abandons it. He runs away from it and he returns home, hoping that the creature didn't continue to be alive. But we get to see the creature live throughout the book. He has to teach himself what the world is, like a baby without a parent. The creature has to discover his own world. And in that, he learns to hate humanity and he's going to seek retribution and revenge on Victor Frankenstein, his creator. So this book is really really beautiful. You know, it's a couple hundred years old. I think it just had its 200th year anniversary pretty recently, but it's very very beautiful. It teaches us a lot about relationships between caretakers and those they care for. And it's something that I'd like to see a lot of you consider reading because I think we should all read some classic literature at times. Fun fact: Shelley, the author, started writing this when she was 18 years old, and it was first published when she was 20, which is absolutely stunning. So it just goes to show you age isn't always a factor in writing beautiful stories. All right, so those are your 8 choices. Here's what you need to do now. Think about it, review the choices, go through this again, maybe look at the slides, do some digging of your own, go to goodreads.com, look it up online, see what people think, look at the star ratings, and make a selection. If you don't really have a good idea, ask for our recommendations. Reach out to us and we'll let you know. Once you have some idea of what you like to explore, we're going to ask for you to choose your top 3. I can't guarantee that I'll give you your top choice because everyone might want the same book. We'll see how that goes. But basically, what you're going to need to do once you're ready is to click on your class's Google form. I'll show you what it looks like. You need to give us your full name, and then you're going to go through and fill out your first, second, and third choice. Drop down menu to open that up, and then choose the book that you want. Okay, each is required, so you have to choose 3 choices. You can't just do the same book each time. Please choose 3 different choices, and then very first thing of second semester after January 19th, we will let you know what your book clubs are. So book club, how's that going to look? We'll talk definitely more about this in the coming days, but book clubs in a virtual world is going to be a bit unusual. We have to do our best to embrace the idea of a book club and meeting and talking with your peers, even when you're not in person. I know this is going to be uncomfortable for some of you, but there are some ways that hopefully I can mitigate that. We're going to be using Flipgrid, where you will be posting and your posts will be seen by your book club group. So you're actually going to post and reply to each other's videos. Jamboard, which we've done in class, we're going to be using that a little bit day to day, and then possibly some Zoom breakout rooms depending on how the semester goes. One of the first things we're going to do next week is create a reading schedule and then dive right in. Last thing, you're going to be checking these books out from Sora. Just for ease, based on how first semester went with getting physical copies of your books, I'm going to ask that all of you do ebooks this time. If you want to purchase your own or acquire your own copy of the book, that is fine. And we'll talk more about how to do that a little bit later. All right, so those are the World Lit book clubs. Thank you all, and I hope you choose something you like.